Hi, I'm Pam Hayes from Hayes Sewing Machine Company of Wilmington, Delaware. It's good to see you back. We're continuing our series for creative ideas, and because April is National Serger Month, we decided to do a decorative serger edge. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to work with a heavier thread like you see on my serger. And this is Glamour, and it is kind of a sparkly thread. The same technique that I'm going to be showing you how to do, you could also do with a 12 weight sulky thread. This is a cotton thread. This one is going to have a little bit more of a shimmer to it, so it depends on how glitzy you want to go. And then the 12 weight, you're going to have a nice matted cotton look. But both of them will do a nice job on your serger. Now, if you're new to sergers, be aware that most sergers come as a 4 needle, 4 thread, I should say, machine. And we're going to be using 3 of those today. So we're going to have the right needle out, the left needle in, and then for the loopers, that's where we want to put our pretty thread. So when we're working with it, you're going to have 2 of the same type if you prefer. That's what I'm doing today, but you can mix it up if you want to as well. So when we're working with doing our decorative, just want to show you our, so pretty chain. Okay, whenever you're getting loops, ladies and gentlemen, if there's a gentleman out there, that's awesome. Loops are a good thing. Be aware that when you are threading Glamour, it is simple enough and it's thin enough that you could tie it and to your thread that you already have in there and pull it through, and it would be absolutely fine. We're doing a run on here. I just want to do a test just to make sure everything's okay. And you'll see how it's a nice wide stitch. Now, a lot of times you'll say, well, why am I only doing a 3 thread as opposed to a 4? And you'll see that the white is my left needle. And think about it, do you really want another straight stitch running down your pretty decorative? So you want to make sure that a lot of times when I'm doing a serger edge, it's only 3 threads that I'm using. All right, now I have chosen to do some polar fleece. So this is my owl polar fleece that I have, and I'm going to round the corners. And a lot of times people say, oh, I don't do well rounding corners. Neither do I. So let me show you the little trick that I use. You're going to grab a plate, a saucer, anything that has a curve. I line up all of my edges of my blanket, the corners. You're going to line them right on top of each other. I put a couple of pins in, and then what I did is I laid my plate down and I drew a line. That's it. And then we're going to take and we're going to trim all the way around, and ta-da! There's my curve. And you can actually use this to test on for your fabric. So if I want to see what this is going to look like on my polar fleece, and it's going to give it a nice sparkle. All right, so I'm going to have blue for the upper looper, blue for the top, and underneath it's going to have the purple. Now, as you're working with this, a lot of times people say, well, it's rounded corners. How do I get on? How do I physically get onto my blanket? And it's really simple. So this is good for anything that you're doing an edge and you want to simply be able to kind of hop on for the serger. Because if you've ever used a serger, it's no big deal if you're starting on a straight corner, you just sew on. But if you have something that's curved, and there's no real particular way of starting on, this is a nice little trick to know. I'm going to be always trimming something for my blanket. I never wanted to go around and never trim anything. It won't necessarily give you the nicest look. So look what I did. See how I made a little notch? All right, it's about 1/4 of an inch deep, and it's about 2 inches long, 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. All right, this is going to be helpful. So you need to start with your needle for your serger in the high position. So you know how the needle can be down, so you want to make sure you're turn the wheel so the needle's up. Raise the foot. You're going to pull a little slack of the needle thread. So you don't, you want a little bit of looseness, and then you're going to pull on the chain. So you'll see that it's starting to have 3 kind of very loose threads in there. What's going to happen, there's your blade. Your blade is going to be cutting, and I'm just going to hop on. I'm going to put the blade in the niche of the corner, and then when I start to sew, I'm trimming something off, and I'm going to sew all the way around. So take a look. This is how we would start. See how you're literally hopping on. Now I'm coming around the other way. I'm trimming off my extra. And I'm not really trimming anything because remember it's at that rectangular bit that I cut off. See my threads? I'm going to hold it out to the side, and I'm going to over sew about 1/4 inch. Okay. Now at this point, how do we get off? Raise the foot again, make sure your needle's in the high position, and just pull that slack in the needle, and we have come back off. All right, so let's do it on the real thing. So we're going to do the same thing. Let me take my pins out from my corner. And this is going to be a little play mat for a kid. So I'm going to cut my rectangle out. Okay. Needle up. Pull the thread down. So again, the threads are loose, and I'm going to hop on. You want to basically go in, the needle should be in as far as it would be normally when you're sewing. So you're only going to go in about 1/4 inch. At this point, start to sew. And remember, we always want to trim something off. Doesn't have to be a lot. So, we're only trimming a little bit off. But you always get a nicer looking edge if you do that. When you come to the curves, again, make sure you trim something off. That way it'll give you a nice look. If you find that you're not very successful on your curves, try slowing down, which I know for me is hard, and trim something off. If you don't trim anything off, you're not going to get a good looking stitch. Alright, so we're coming down. You don't realize how big your blanket is until you're serging it. again, I'm on my curve. Trimming off. I keep on coming down. Size you want to cut for your blanket really depends on you. If I'm doing it for an adult, I tend to do it about 2 yards because most adults, we want to be able to tuck our feet and our hands in. So 2 yards tends to be really good. What I'm doing here is 1 yard, so it'll be basically 3 feet by 6. All right, coming up to my 3rd corner. Again, slow down a little bit. In your needle thread, you just want regular serging thread. Regular polyester will do you fine. You don't want your decorative thread. I don't find it shows enough to warrant using it. All right, and I'm coming down and around to my last bit here. All right, so I've trimmed off that last little notch. So you see all of my stuff that I have trimmed for my blanket. I'm coming down, and yes, ladies, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to put my glasses on. Oh, there's a blanket here. All right. So we're going to sew. I'm cutting off the first little bit. I'm sewing basically, there you go. And if you think you've cut a little bit, it should be fine. But if you feel like you've cut a little bit, that's why fray check. Fray check is a good thing, but you should be fine. So at this point, I'm going to stop, over sew, raise the needle, slide it out, and again, pop off. Now, you'll see how we have a chain. Okay, so I have my chain. So, a couple of different things you can do for your chain is they make tapestry needles. See how it has a large eye? Or they make a double-sided needle. So it doesn't technically have a point. And then you can put that into the chain. So what's going to happen is I'm going to flatten out the chain a little bit, fold it over like I'm doing yarn, pull it through, and then I'm just going to weave this in. Okay, so weave it underneath, give it a gentle tug. And I don't need all of this, so I'm going to see if I can. There you go. Pull some of that. And then it's hidden underneath. Now what I'll do is I'll cut that, and I will put a little bit of fray check. Fray check is a thread. Basically, it'll sealant. It's going to hold everything, so you should be good. So again, clip it, you are good to go. And it's finished! Isn't that a lovely thing for a sewing person to be able to say, I have started and finished a project. All right, we are all good to go. So give it a shot. If you have some polar fleece or some nice flannel, will also work well for doing this technique. When you're working with it, just remember, have a good time. And for next week, Loretta's going to be doing a video that is going to be a little different format. We're going to be doing it on YouTube Live, and what's going to happen is she's going to be talking about threads. I'm sorry, not threads, needles. She's going to be talking about needles, and you're going to be able to ask questions in real time. So we will see you then.